The price of peace. She stared at the younger orc, her face a mix of confusion and disgust. There must be some mistake, she said, fighting to keep her voice respectful. We've spent years watching the borders. Now we're supposed to just let them in. He was her commander, and, in theory, she should have bitten her tongue and done as she was bid. But she'd saved Tavis' life once, back when they'd both been raw recruits fighting together in Scarsind nearly a decade ago. She would never dare to question him in front of others, but he'd made a habit of giving her orders in private for years now, and she was pretty sure she knew why. In private, she could speak her mind. There's no mistake, he said in a tone that indicated that this was final. He repeated his instructions to underline them. You are to let them cross the border. Keep an eye on them, but don't get in their way. They are hunting for the Howler. You must do nothing to help them. Nothing. We've made a bargain with the Whisperer not to harm his people. It's death to anyone who breaks that oath. She nodded, but she was still confused. I understand what I have to do. I don't understand why. The Howler is their enemy? We should be fighting them, not letting them hunt our lands. It's all part of the plan. Peace is just war fought with different weapons. If giving the Imperials what they want helps us to get what we want, then that's what we do. She'd heard that before, more than once. She wasn't sure what the words meant, but him saying it meant this conversation was over. She straightened her spear and her spine, nodded to the commander, and turned to go. She might not like it, but orders were orders. The Empire shares a continent with a number of adjacent powers, some stronger than others. 4 powerful orc nations surround the Empire: the Jotun, Druj, Thule, and Grendel. The nations of Skura, Axos, and Farad'n are small, each only a few territories at most. The Iron Confederacy is much bigger, however, and claims to be the Empire's equal in size and prominence. It may even be true. The Empire maintains careful diplomatic relations with most of these nations, including the Thule and the Grendel. Each of these nations maintains armies, and in the case of the Grendel, navies of their own. Though each has their own strengths and weaknesses, with the possible exception of the Iron Confederacy, they are not as powerful as the Empire. If the Orc nations ever united, their armies would outnumber the Empire, but such occurrences are rare. For the most part, the barbarians dislike each other even more than they dislike the Empire. It takes a fast-sailing fleet a few weeks to make the journey to these foreign lands. In times of peace, the journey is relatively safe, but the Bay of Katazar is threatened by Grendel at present, making it a treacherous and difficult journey. In practical terms, the distances are short enough that they are significant for a navy or an army, but it is possible for fleets and military units of any nation to move quickly to threaten one of their neighbours. Each season, the civil service will publish a current summary of the relationship with the nations based on communications received from their ambassador, if any, along with any useful intelligence. If the power has made any official overtures to the Empire, be they diplomatic, military, or economic offers, they will be included. While the Senate and the other great houses may use their powers to respond to these offers, it is important to note that it is the ambassador who the foreign power will expect to hear from. Their letter to the foreign power is the primary element that will determine the tenor of any response. Otkadov. The Empire has enjoyed the benefits of a long period of peace with the Thule, at the cost of land. An initial treaty signed in 379 YE ceded the valuable region of Silver Peaks in Sermasuak and the hills of Krivsati in Karsk in exchange for 3 years of peace. When the peace was extended in 382 YE, the Thule took Crow's Ridge in Scarsind. There have been sporadic collaboration with Thule armies during the peace, with Imperial forces fighting side by side with the Dragon soldiers against the Jotun in Sermasuak and against the Druj in Ossium. But each time, the price of that aid has been land. They conquered the Bonewood during the fighting in Ossium, and the price of their aid against the Jotun were the regions of Michernia in Mikarova and the Webwood in Ossium. There have been notable diplomatic triumphs during this time. In a surprise move, the Dragons of Otkadov chose to release all their slaves, following Imperial anger at the taking of slaves by Thule armies fighting the Jotun in Sermasuak. Getting Imperial sanctions on Thule trade lifted appears to have been a significant factor, but ultimately it appears the Dragons simply decided that the benefits of slavery were not worth the trouble, given the way the issue poisoned relations between Otkadov and the Empire. There were rumours of food shortages on the other side of the northern mountains, but negotiations with the Empire saw opportunities to trade for food that enriched Imperial citizens. It seems the threat of famine has now passed, although the Thule show no signs of wishing to end the flow of grain and meat to Otkadov. The Thule ambassador to the Empire is Rak, who speaks for the Dragons Undivided, an older warlock who has several times visited the Empire. He is known as a cynical and somewhat sarcastic individual who is prone to lose his temper with those he considers to be wasting his time or failing to be subtle in their manipulations. Peace negotiations. The Empire signed a 5-year peace treaty with the Thule that is due to expire in summer 387 YE. The treaty states that 1 year before it expires, the Thule and the Empire will meet together and discuss the state of relations and our further plans going forward. The Empire have indicated they would like to begin these negotiations with a view to extending the peace treaty, even to try and create a lasting peace. The Dragons are open to the prospect of an enduring peace with the Empire, but it is clear they expect the Empire to pay a heavy price for it. Previous negotiations have been profitable for the Thule, and they welcome any chance to discuss new opportunities, and more opportunities to trade land for peace. More Thule lands have returned to the control of the Dragons through peace than they have ever conclusively gained through battle alone, and they are keen to continue that trend. However, they are concerned that the Empire has frequently failed to understand the nature of the arrangements that it has made with the Thule. Too often of late, it seems to regard the gift of land not as a payment, but more as a loan. The Dragons bought this land with the lives of their Thule, but now the wars are won, the Empire has started asking the Thule to give back the lands they just ceded to them. This does not bode well. To resolve this impasse, the ambassador demanded that the Imperial Senate pass a motion recognizing that the Silver Peaks, Michernia, Krevsati, Crow's Ridge, Bonewood, and Webwood are part of Otkadov, now and forever, renouncing any claim on these lands. They were clear that they would not even begin negotiating with the Empire until that happened. To try to placate the Thule, the Imperial Senate passed a motion that recognizes that the Thule have dominion over Krevsati, Michernia, Crow's Ridge, Silver Peak, and the Webwood, and recognizes that they are a part of Otkadov. We will take no steps to challenge this while bound by the peace we seek to extend. However, the wording of this Senate motion, subtly different from that demanded by the Dragons, seems to have only enraged them further. They took the recent opportunity presented by the Wintermark decision to honor Yulia Kazimiova-Voronov to very publicly slight the Varushkins, making it clear that they would welcome the Empire appointing a new ambassador from Wintermark. It remains to be seen if they will find the new ambassador, Kindra Surefoot, any more to their liking than the previous incumbent. Either way, their demands have not changed, but they have become more explicit. The Dragons of Otkadov will not enter any negotiations with the Empire unless the Imperial Senate passes the following Senate motion. Given the misunderstanding last season, the Dragons won't accept any variation to this wording. The Cassinean Empire recognizes that the Silver Peaks, Michernia, Krevsati, Crow's Ridge, Bonewood, and Webwood are part of Otkadov, now and forever. The Empire renounces any claim on these lands. The Civil Service confirmed that this Senate motion has no legal implications of any kind. One cannot bind the hands of a future Senate, so the Empire will be under no legal obligation to stick to this statement in the future. There is nothing barring the Senate from passing the motion. It isn't unconstitutional for the Senate to pass a motion stating its intentions or views, it's just not legally binding. Rak, who speaks for the Dragons Undivided, notes that, clever as it is, the Dragons will not accept an address by the throne on this matter. They are very clear that the Senate must vote on the matter. The Dragons apparently see little purpose in opening negotiations with the Empire if there is a dominant faction in the Senate who are still harbouring hopes of negotiating the Thule out of these regions of Otkadov. If the Senate's statement can be secured, Rak looks forward to a personal meeting with Ambassador Kindra to discuss interesting offers, but concurs that until this chapter is satisfactorily concluded, there is no way to start a new one. A Hound of Darkness, Surma Suak. The Thule made an offer to the Empire last season. If the Imperial Senate decided to elect a citizen of Wintermark as ambassador to Otkadov, then they would allow the nation to search for Marek the Golden Tongue. Kindra Surefoot was elected by the Senate during the summit, and several military units sent into the Silver Peaks to seek out the former mediator. Almost 3,000 heroes of Wintermark made the journey to what used to be Wintermark's land, and managed to find enough of Marek's followers that she was forced to withdraw to one of her hideaways, Ainor's Rest. If Marek and her allies are not defeated, then they will escape justice once again, recruiting additional followers and enacting more and more acts of brutality. Given that this came about as a result of their election as ambassador to Otkadov, it is the responsibility of the incumbent, Kindra Surefoot, to kill Marek the Golden Tongue. The Broken Shore. The peace treaty with the Grendel created by the Imperial Fleetmaster came to an end in autumn 385 YE. There were nominal efforts to extend the treaty, but they came to an abrupt end when Salt Lord Kaliakt betrayed the Council and threw in her lot with the Empire. From that point on, war with the Grendel became inevitable, and in winter 385 YE, their armies and navies assaulted Madruga in force. Despite being at war, Grendel orcs continued to operate their embassy in cargo. Obviously there are no Grendel merchants coming to Imperial ports at this time, but the Grendel seem to consider it significant that their embassy remains open. When asked about this, Speaker Morna's deputy smiles and responds that war is a poor way to turn a profit. Those who only know how to fight are doomed to do little else. As far as the Grendel are concerned, civilized people, like the Empire and themselves, keep talking, even when they're at war with each other. The Grendel ambassador to the Empire is Speaker Morna, of the House of the Seventh Forge, who normally resides in Duvtraig. They are a canny negotiator described by one wag as being slippery as a bucket of soapy eels. They report to the Council of the Salt Lords, and while it is likely they have their own political ambitions, they are Grendel after all, they seem to take particular pride in discharging their duties to their masters with wry aplomb. Children of Rex. Speaker Morna is pleased to accept an invitation from the ambassador to come to Anvil to discuss recent events with their imperial counterpart. They caution that the Salt Lords are not interested in peace at this time, but they are concerned about the uprising of the followers of Siaka, the High Priestess of Shivan, and her children of Rex. According to the ambassador, the magician priests at the Temple of Tempest Jade have broken from the Grendel and claimed the entire Bay of Katazar for themselves, and the terrible Eternal they revere as a goddess. For reasons that are not entirely clear, this betrayal seems to concern the Grendel in a way that the treachery of the former Salt Lords Kaliakt and Aeson does not. Treachery is an ever-present risk in Grendel politics, and no Salt Lord ever really trusts the others. Perhaps because they expect it, they don't view it with any personal acrimony when it happens. Shivan's betrayal seems to be a different matter somehow, and it has the Grendel concerned enough that Morna is coming to Anvil to discuss the possibility of cooperation to defeat the self-styled High Priestess and her children of Rex. The original suggestion, presented by the Grendel, was for a short period of ceasefire to allow both nations to destroy this new threat. However, recent developments have made that more difficult than originally planned. With the passage to free landing now impassable to armies, it is not clear, in the short term, how the Empire can defeat the Wreckers, even without the Grendel to worry about. Speaker Morna plans to discuss the whole situation with their counterpart and see what agreements can be reached. At the very least, a formal agreement to share intelligence about their common enemy could benefit both sides. Iron Confederacy. The Iron Confederacy is a powerful nation that claims to rival the Empire in size and strength. It is hard to be certain how true such claims are. Apart from sporadic clashes over the years, the Empire has never come into direct conflict with its neighbour. What is clear is that the Surani consider themselves a rival and peer of the Cassanaean Empire. No nation appreciates being threatened or intimidated, but the Dukes of the Iron Confederacy react especially badly to perceived slights. Despite these challenges, the Empire has managed to maintain a civil relationship with the Surani. This despite the fact that the Iron Confederacy loathes magicians and considers the entire conclave to be filled with evildoers in service to their demon, Dumon. In fact, they demand guarantees that any ambassador appointed by the Empire is not a magician. Their view of the Synod is no better. They see the Empire's priests as drug-addled heretics who deny even the existence of the Serani pantheon. They do, at least, respect the military council and the throne, but it is a narrow bridge to build a shared understanding on. Attempts to persuade the Confederacy to give up slavery have yielded only the most meagre harvest. The dukes were eager to see the sanctions imposed by the Empire under the terms of the Liberty Pact lifted, but the vast estates of the dukes are worked by slaves, and there was deep resistance to meaningful change. In the end, they agreed to change the status of all their slaves to put them on the same level as their serfs. They freely acknowledged that the difference is minor, but serfs do enjoy some limited protections that their slaves did not. For example, serfs are protected under Serani law from direct violence and cannot be bought and sold as chattel. They still have no freedom of movement. They cannot leave the land they are bound to where they live and work. But the landowner does have some responsibility to ensure that they are not unnecessarily abused. This minor change saw the Imperial Senate remove trade sanctions last summer, despite the fact that some vocal opponents of the Confederacy see it as merely a semantic change that has done very little to improve the lot of the people tyrannized by the Serani nobility. The Serani ambassador to the Empire is Baroness Catherine Lavasse of Mior, who operates from the Tor Lavasse in Chobret, a territory unknown to imperial citizens that apparently lies to the west of the Voroin. A noble Naga, she replaced the significantly more dogmatic Jean de Hibernat, a high priestess of the Serani god Evra the Smith, Maiden of the Forge. She has already indicated that she is very much more pragmatic than her predecessor, and more interested in compromise. She still reports to the Dukes of the Iron Confederacy, however, and so her apparent goodwill toward the Empire cannot be relied upon. Choosing sides. At present, the Iron Confederacy remains officially neutral in the conflict between the Grendel and the Empire. At one point, there was a proposal to consider a military alliance that would have seen Serani and Imperial soldiers cooperate in driving the Orcs out of Feroz, but it fell apart when it became eminently clear that the Serani would expect to keep any regions they liberated from the Grendel. Since then, they have been frank about the fact that they are trading with the Grendel, and were blunt in rebuffing any suggestion that Imperial vessels might hunt Grendel ships in Serani waters. Any Imperial fleets hunting the Grendel must confine themselves to their own waters if they wish to avoid problems. However, the Empire are not the only power that seeks an alliance with the Confederacy. Baroness Lavasse admits they have little interest in siding with the decadent Assaveans and the Dumont-addled Yarmish, or with the Grendel pawns. However, pragmatism must reign in the world of international politics. The Freedom Accord have offered substantial inducements, the nature of which she will not be drawn on, for the Iron Confederacy to offer material aid to the Grendel and their Assavean allies. Committing troops to such a conflict is not on the table, but supplies and materiel certainly could be, all of which could be of great use to the Empire's enemies in a war of attrition. Yet even as pragmatism dictates that consideration must be given to the Freedom Alliance's offer, it also dictates that the Empire must be given a chance to make a good counter-offer. The Baroness is keen to offer reassurances that a formal treaty is not necessary. While it may help from a legal standpoint to condense all potential inducements into one concise document, negotiations can be time-consuming, and there is only so long that the Freedom Accord can be stalled before they demand a firm answer one way or the other. As such, if the Empire wishes the Iron Confederacy to retain their neutral stance, swift action on the Empire's part is ideal. She suggests that there are obvious advantages to the Empire here, even if all they manage is to persuade the Serani to remain neutral. The more the Empire seems to be positively disposed to the Serani people, the more the Baroness will be able to persuade the ducal houses to continue to focus on internal political matters. The Baroness understands that decision-making on the international stage takes time, but if frankness is appreciated, she will be frank. The Freedom Accord are pressing for concrete answers, and feasts will not distract them for much longer. Whatever moves are to be made must be made quickly, as the Dukes will doubtless have to take a firm position by the end of the season. She understands the work that has already been done in years past, inviting Serani lawkeepers to hunt the hand of Dumont hiding in Imperial lands, and making the sale or gifting of Liao to the Iron Confederacy a crime. But friendship is like food. If not preserved, it rots. Whatever gifts, legal crackdowns, or gestures of respect are made, they must be made quickly and without reservation. Thus far, the Confederacy have received nothing in response to this obvious attempt to pressure the Empire. The Imperial Ambassador to the Iron Confederacy has informed their counterpart that the matter is being considered by the throne and the Imperial Consul, but those discussions bore no fruit at the summit of the spring equinox. Baroness Levasse feels it is important to understand that these delays mean that time is very much running out, and that some sort of accommodation with the Empire's enemies is imminent. Still, word that the Emperor herself is involved in these conversations is met with a great deal of approval. The Serrani people understand the importance of a strong leader who can make hard choices for the sake of their people. Doubtless, under the rule of the one crowned in thunder, the Serrani and Casanean empires will be able to stand side by side and respect one another as equals. While the Baroness is sure that the Emperor's memory of the conversation with Sir Marquette during the winter solstice needs no prompting, she does include a non-exhaustive list of potential steps that the Empire could take to ensure the friendship of the Iron Confederacy. Outlawing the sale or transportation of all narcotics into the Iron Confederacy, on top of the current prohibition on trading or gifting liao, would go down well. Making it illegal to preach the Imperial way in the Iron Confederacy would similarly be a popular move, though she understands that a reciprocal motion banning the promotion of the Serrani faith in the Empire might be the cost of such a law. Free trade status for the Iron Confederacy is nice and simple. Similarly, a direct statement made through the Senate or via an imperial address acknowledging the Serrani people as the equals of the Casanean Empire on the diplomatic stage would be a good sign of friendship. The Baroness is at pains to stress that the Empire is free to get creative in this matter. After all, Ambassador Tethros should doubtless understand the culture of the Iron Confederacy enough to know what they would like. Skora. The nation of Skora lies to the direct east of the Empire's newest territories of Marave. The arid lands they called Mahal were once part of their homeland, but they lost control of them and moved east into the mountains several centuries ago. Skora itself claims territories in the mountains to the east, bordering on the Mountains of the Moon and the western hills of Axos. The full extent of Skoran territory is unknown. They are an insular people who put great store by the respective territory, and while not xenophobic in their outlook, are a dour people who do not allow foreigners to freely travel within their borders. With the exception of, perhaps, the occasional foray through the Sentinel Gate, it is unclear that any imperial citizen has visited the Skoran deepholds in 100 years or more. The Skorans are known to be a disciplined and ordered society, with a steadfast commitment to living a stoic, methodical life. They are believed to have strong cultural and possibly religious beliefs in the importance of minimizing collective risk and to be experts in the prosecution and defense of sieges and the engineering of war. This suggests that they have some practical experience with the actual prosecution of conflict, but for the most part, historical contact with Skoran military interests has come via their skilled mercenary companies. Contact with Skora only recently resumed, thanks to the direct intervention of the Eternal Prospero at the request of the Celestial Arch. After the initial delegation, diplomatic contact so far has been fairly minimal. The Skorans are quite clear that they regard maintaining mutual embassies as a step taken only between close allies, and seem to have preferred thus far to operate via the office of the Imperial Consul. The Skoran citizen delegated to act as ambassador to the Empire is apparently named Torka Gara, Delve Mistress of Skora, whose hands flow with silver. Very little is known about them. Diplomatic relations between Skora and the Empire are still in their early stages. Treaty of Stone. As the summer solstice approaches, the civil service receives word of a treaty proposed and submitted by Torka Gara, the Skoran's diplomatic representative. The treaty has apparently been negotiated and agreed in principle by the Imperial Consul, though of course it would need to be formally submitted to and passed by the Imperial Senate to take effect. The text of the proposed treaty is as follows. This treaty is an expression of mutual respect and cordiality between the Skoran Consolidation and the Casanean Empire. These two parties are the signatories to this treaty. Both signatories acknowledge the Empire's recent conquest of the territory now known as Marave and welcome the nation of Imperial Orcs to the territory. With the resumption of Imperial and Skoran land borders, both parties recognize the appropriateness of signing a treaty of cordial relations at this time. The Consolidation celebrates the defeat of the Grendel and awaits with interest news of the future intentions of the new occupants of the territory. As a people who reject enslavement in practice and principle, the Consolidation welcomes the Imperial Orcs, scions of freedom, as suitable stewards and owners of the lowland. The Consolidation acknowledges the establishment of hopes of safe harbour and homeland in the land they themselves once called home, in order to provide security and the foundation of a lasting peace. All Scoran historical claim to territories on the Bay of Catizar, including Marave, is formally renounced in perpetuity. The Consolidation respects and acknowledges the ambitions of the Empire to defeat the Orcs of the Broken Shore and Attar, and formally states that they regard the Empire as a more suitable and responsible steward of these lands. The Consolidation will not attempt to interfere in the politics or military affairs of the Orcs of the Broken Shore or Attar, both neutral parties and those that align themselves with the Grendel nation, without consultation with the Empire. Both parties state an intention for future successful negotiations regarding the deployment of Scoran mercenaries in this theatre of war. The Empire acknowledges the history of the Scoran people in Marave that was once Mahal, and will attempt to return, at reasonable costs, any cultural and historical artifacts of the Scoran people that are uncovered as they develop the territory. The Empire acknowledges the profound wish of the Scoran people to live in security and to enjoy the fruits of the labour of their hands in peace. They reject territorial claim to the lands in which the Scoran people now dwell, known to some as the Deep Holdings or the Spine of the Creator. The Empire respects the friendship of the Scoran people with the people of the Mountain of the Moon who call themselves Sark, and acknowledges the risks to the Consolidation that destabilization of this society could bring. Therefore, the Empire commits themselves to consulting with the Consolidation on substantive matters pertaining to Sark. This treaty has been approved and signed by the Guiding Council of the Consolidation, and hence takes effect on the notification of the Consolidation's representative by the Imperial Consul that the Imperial Senate has indicated its own approval. The treaty mentions the people of Sark, who the Scorans are known to have diplomatic relations with, but with whom the Empire does not in any formal sense. It pointedly does not mention Axos, who were historically a channel for imperial communication with Scora, and this omission could suggest a cooling of relations between these two foreign powers. In terms of legal effect, the actual wording of the treaty is minimal. A future Senate could still elect to declare war on Scora, which would make the guarantees regarding the Empire's territorial claims moot. The Civil Service's assessment is that this treaty is primarily an attempt to provide a clear basis of diplomatic reset and a normalization of relations. The Scorans appear to have concluded that the Empire is worth dealing with directly, and the treaty establishes the basis of that relationship. Lysambria. The Orcs of the Lysambrian Hills, once independent bandits, then defeated refugees, now sworn to the Jotun, have been engaged in a constant cycle of invasion and retreat with the Empire for some years now. Most recently, they were repulsed from their latest assault on Karaman in yet another bloody campaign. It is a costly pattern of invasion and defeat that has played out across the canvas of the Cinnabar Hills and the grasslands of Segura for a decade or more. Yet, as the seasons turn towards summer, a small party of orange-clad orcs cross the border under a flag of truce. When Imperial scouts demand to know their intentions, they say that they are heading to Anvil on a diplomatic matter and claim the protection of the law. When pressed further, they clam up. All they will say is that Avicenna I Charismi I Gera, who was once the senator for Segura and is now and forever known as the Golden Jarl, either already has, or soon will have, further details. The scouts provide an informal escort, keeping an eye on the orcs and ensuring they do not stray from the path to Anvil. As the summer solstice inches closer, the delegation has arrived in Casanea. The civil service have been informed that they intend to attend the field of Anvil at around 11 o'clock on Saturday morning, and hope to be met by Avicenna I Charismi I Gera and whatever worthies she will vouch for. As for the substance of any subsequent discussions, that remains to be seen. There appear to be no non-Lysambrian Jotun among these orcs. It seems that they have come on behalf of their own septs, regardless of who they are here to see. As representatives of a nation to which the Empire does not have a formal ambassador, diplomatic relations with the Lysambrian Jotun fall under the purview of the Imperial Consul. The price of peace is constant bloody talking. Callus Strategos, Dean of the Lyceum during the reign of Empress Brennan.